doing parties in Brixton for ages. I used to be sick before the parties because also it's like I'd pay for the venue, which would be 50 quid or whatever, and you didn't know if people weren't going to come.
I hear you're a beekeeper.
I do beekeeping. Veins are not
Exactly
blurred, everything's
that,
pumping and feeling good. You're in the flow. I mean, basically that's where we want to go, isn't it?
Well, that was poetic. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you wherever you are in the world. I'm joined today by a true legend of dance music, one half of the stunning dynamic duo, Basement Jaxx. Felix is here with me. It's
Hello.
a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
So really what I'd like to talk to you about, Felix, is a little bit outside of the realm of music.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do more about something that I discovered about you that is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you're a beekeeper.
I do beekeeping with my dad used to do it, and now my mum has taken over the bees, and so I'm there every year kind of helping her out. I kind of often come back from Ibiza or somewhere and get back, and then East Midlands Airport, get to my mum's, and then we go and take the honey off in the summer, and yeah, so that's been all my life. Yeah.
So do you own your own apiary, or is this a place?
My mum has the bees in a garden now.
Wow.
Yeah, and they've always been in our garden or sort of around, and yeah. So I grew up in a village. Well, my dad was a vicar, so there was the church pastures, and the bees would be around, and yeah.
That sounds so idyllic. Sounds so
It
spiritual
was
in a
just
way.
beautiful.
So
And I'm very cold because we had no heating, but
no heating.
no. And
So-
that was in the 70s and 80s.
So talk to me a little bit about what it is like, taking care of bees. What is it like getting in touch with nature on such a level and being able to actually, I guess, I have no idea where to begin. Why don't you break down a little bit what that task is like?
Well, in a way, you're managing their home a little bit. I mean, obviously they're their own bee, and yeah, I suppose in a way, I mean, I'm definitely getting to the point when you think about with animals and kind of if you're keeping them, are you stopping their freedoms? It's like a zoo. It's like bees if you're taking their honey.
Well,
So now I do think about ethically, is this, vegans don't want to have the honey. So I do think about those things, but yeah, you're kind of, they have their own way of living and the swarming and their life cycle, but hopefully you're giving them a good home and letting them be free. It's like if you have a parrot as a pet, the ideal scenario is they can fly off wherever, but they still want to come back to you. And the bees do recognize different human beings. Like my mum,
that's the other question I wanted to ask you.
which is amazing that they kind of, I don't know how they do it electromagnetically or the vibe or whatever.
So a bee can know a human being.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know to what point. I don't know if anyone's done a study on this, but I think that's pretty amazing.
I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, what about your relationship with them? Do you know the bees, so to speak? Is beekeeping a process where you can just do things the same every time, or do you need to take care at certain seasons to behave in certain ways in order to do what's best for the hive? How does that work?
I think in a way, like really good beekeepers are like really good divers, or kind of people who are very in tune. That, like, some beekeepers don't wear any like protection or anything like that. But I've been stung loads in one go, so I'm kind of and my missus, she kind of had a reaction against a sting. So I mean,
Okay.
it's kind of stings are good for old people and arthritis. Apparently, if you're really old and have some kind of like creaky joints, maybe just go and get yourself stung. It might help.
That's absolutely interesting to me because really I think, Felix, what you're touching on is the relationship between mankind and nature. And the fact that there are benefits that come from things that we may not, we are completely unaware of. How how has that discipline of keeping bees kind of enlightened you or opened your eyes to when we step away from that world and step towards maybe even a dance floor? Are there any principles that you've gathered from that discipline that translate in any other ways or any,
About finding the buzz.
if you will?
Well, I mean, everything is vibration, isn't it? Kind of, we're electromagnetic fields. We're interacting now with the environment, with the cameras, with the circuitry of the world, which is
Yeah,
like the DNA of the world.
yeah.
And so with bees, in a way, you're going to their community and you're interacting with them. So it's kind of, I mean, with music, if you're DJing or whatever, you're kind of trying to link up with the field, like with the people, and get where they're at. And if they're not in a good place, you want to move them to a better place. So I mean, that's kind of the good part of being a musician or artist or whatever, that hopefully you can have an effect on the field you're in or the
Of
hive,
course.
you know.
Of course. There's something pastoral about what it is that you're talking about. As you say, what I mean is there's a sense of leadership. There's a sense of guidance towards a greater good, or a sense of a guidance towards the inspiration that will make a positive difference in a person's life. As a producer and as a DJ, when you take that instinct of yours into account, how do you see that play itself out in the things that you do?
Well, it's like a conversation or I don't know, people might go home for Christmas and how was the vibe? Was everyone getting on? Were the
Yeah,
relationships good?
yeah.
It's the same with if you're on stage, you're kind of setting up an atmosphere and a relationship. You know, they might go, boo, go home. And then you might go, oh, I really want to be liked by you or something. Is that your issue? Or I don't know. Everyone's got their
Yeah,
issues. So they're all
yeah,
out there. But
right.
when we stop thinking about it, that's when we can kind of balance ourselves up and,
Yeah,
I don't know, find that sweet spot
yeah.
where we're kind of, um, yeah, being uplifted and living in all our veins and our blood,
Exactly.
everything's
And,
pumping and feeling good. You're in the flow. I mean, basically, that's where we want to go, isn't
well, that was poetic,
it?
but
Maybe, well, we haven't finished the album yet. Maybe that might go in there. Yeah.
in fact, speaking about that sense of flow and that sense of balance, I spoke to to the other half of the duo earlier on, and he started to tell me a little bit about what the early club life was like for you guys starting out. He talked about the dance floor was empty at one point, and then all of a sudden it wasn't.
Well, I used to be the first person on the dance floor. That was always what I did at the beginning because people are shy. So you want to get the vibe okay. So I'd go and dance around in the middle
Oh, that's
so that it wasn't
unbelievable.
empty.
That's
And then
incredible.
someone else would go, and then you try and stimulate people to come on.
How did it go from you to 5 to 8 to 80 to 800 to 8,000?
To 8 billion.
How that is definitely the point. How did that happen? What was the tipping point? What night was it, or what were you wearing, or what did what was playing? What happened that made you go, oh, Simon, look, things are not the same.
Well, there became a point where suddenly there was a massive queue outside of the club, which helped that Daft Punk came and played as well. And that was there was DJ Sneak and Daft Punk, but that was when people had heard about our stuff, and we were doing these. I mean, people like Eric Murillo and King Britt and Josh Wink. They were all at the thing on their night off in Loughborough Junction, which was the #1 crime hotspot of the UK. That corner, which stupidly I didn't know, and I was
or
like, "It's
Betsy
free."
didn't.
And I remember Daft Punk with they were kind of going upstairs. All the stairs were broken, so were people crumbling, falling down. The decks were getting knocked the whole time. So it was really, but people like the chaos and the excitement, I guess. And yeah, but I mean, there was a point probably with the music we were making and doing parties in Brixton for ages. I used to be sick before the parties because also it's like I'd pay for the venue, which would be 50 quid or whatever, and you didn't know if people weren't going to come. And generally, I'd like photocopy the flyers and stick bits together, and me and my mates would hand them out at pub tables. So it was just like here in Camden and whatever. You just put it out on the tables and come to the party later because that's it. Yeah, because it was like at the time I wanted to make what I imagined they were doing in New York, which actually later I found out was pretty correct. Which is this kind of underground music that was coming out of New York and Chicago in probably early 90s. It was the underground house movement, really. And I wanted to have a room with a stack of speakers with a strobe and a red light, and that was it. So it was a feeling, this real raw.
There was a vision.
Yeah. And then the other room would be jazz, because I was really into jazz dance. And I like the idea that it was all female DJs. So my friends used to DJ, they weren't, and I was like, because it's good having female DJs.
That's awesome.
And but they were like, they weren't that bothered. But they do it. They're like, yeah, it's fun being a DJ for a bit. And it was playing jazz records or whatever, it was fine. And but that was it. But it was really like know people, just get friends and people off the street in Brixton who kind of like there was one crackhead guy who was a little bit dangerous, but dressed really smart as well, and which was surprising, which you don't expect. And so this kind of mix, that kind of helped because you had, some of my mates, uni kids, students, and then some people who definitely weren't students, and they're all together. And going, well, you're interesting,
That is the most DIY start to a stratospheric career I've ever heard in my life. And what I think is most unique about that is that it seemed to have included everyone. It seems as if there was no limit to who could be invited or who was allowed at a Basement Jaxx party, or there seemed to be no restriction. It seemed to be like a sense of freedom. Can you comment on that? Is that true or false?
True.
Yeah. You've answered more than abundantly the questions that I've asked. And then you've introduced some insights into the beginnings of your career that I think anyone would find interesting. I know I find those things extremely interesting. So hope to have you here again.
I definitely will come back to get this stuff finished
No
and
doubt.
Get ready for the live shows.
Yeah.
But yes, Michael, I will be here, down the line, and we will
It's been a pleasure.
continue.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.